Happening now on Grid Tonight, Formula One officially rejected Andretti Global's application to join the grid as the 11th team. Is this officially the end of the road for Michael Andretti and his ambitions to bring the Andretti name back to the pinnacle of motorsport? Defending Repco Supercars champion Brodie Kostecki will miss the 2024 season opener at Bathurst. What's going on between Kostecki and Erebus? IMSA is responding to the ending of the Rolex 24 at Daytona. Why did the race end slightly before hour 24? Hello to all of viewers watching here in the United States and around the world. Welcome to Grid Tonight, your weekly motorsports news program. I'm Kobe Lambeth. With me is Joshua Birch, Matt White from Grid Endurance Performance Index, and Ben Snyder. We encourage everyone to comment in the chat, ask questions, and support us through Super Chat. Now, Josh, take it away with our top story this evening. We have a lot of major news to discuss tonight.
We really do indeed, and we want to hear from you, the fans at home. So get in touch with us on the comments section as well. We'll bring them up as we go, because this has divided the fan base across many a system. But in many respects, it's for once the fans versus Formula One themselves. The fans are united this evening against Formula One after Michael Andretti has continued to work tirelessly the last several years with the hope of bringing Andretti Global to Formula One. The series officially ended those dreams today with a formal rejection of his application to join the grid. Now, Andretti went above and beyond to satisfy all the requirements needed to get the green light to get the Formula One program running, but it still wasn't enough for Formula One to approve. The team was fortunate enough to get the support from the FIA, but F1 itself and majority of the paddock weren't on board with the idea. Every time it seemed like Andretti had a realistic shot of getting approved, F1 seemed to move the goalposts with even more requirements. For example, Andretti initially planned to enter F1 under the Cadillac brand while using an existing power unit. However, this wasn't good enough, so General Motors agreed to build an F1 engine which would have brought a new manufacturer to Formula One. Despite F1's decision to reject Andretti Global's bid to become an 11th team, they're claiming to leave the door open to reconsider it again for the 2028 season. Now, the F1 conclusion statement you can see on your screen here says in several points, in number 14, our assessment process has established that the presence of an 11th team would not on its own provide value to the championship. The most significant way in which a new entrant would bring value is by being sorry, I need to get that on the bigger screen. By being competitive. We do not believe that the applicant would be a competitive participant, despite the fact it was announced the other day that they've already got a wind tunnel operation model scale ready out for the 25 season. Group 15, their second point on the board, the need for any new team to take a compulsory power unit supply, potentially over a period of several seasons, will be damaging to the prestige and standing of the championship. Now, what that means basically is that they're only taking a power unit for several seasons before a new power unit comes in, and effectively the cross-contamination of parts. A bit like how when Mercedes ran with McLaren in 2014 before McLaren switched to Honda in 2015, or how right now Honda are running with Red Bull before Red Bull switched to Ford in 2026. So basically, second statement there is a lie. This is the one, though, that has angered us here at the Grid Network team and the fans around the world. While the Andretti name carries some recognition for F1 fans, our research indicates that F1 would bring value to the Andretti brand rather than the other way around. And then we can continue with the rest later as well, with the points bringing in as well. With the additional 11th team will be operational burdens as well. The rest of those points are just basically runnings on financial systems of the championship that aren't really truthful. The last point, as I mentioned earlier, says we would look differently on an application for the entry of the team into the 2028 season with a GM power unit, either as a GM Works team or as a GM customer team, designing all all allowable components in-house. In this case, there will be additional factors to consider in respect of the value that the applicant would bring to the championship, in particular in respect of bringing a prestigious new OEM to the sport as a PU supplier. Well, already the chat room has blown up this evening as well. Let's get those straight in before we bring Ben, Kobe, and Matt back in. Amber JJ says, cash is king, and F1 don't care about American fans, but loves American money. I felt like that deserved a bit of a raise. We hate this, in all capital letters as well. Adam says, Amber, I'll agree with you. This is a dark day in F1 history as well. And A Day in the Life says, I never had confidence in Formula 1 management since Chase Carey left as well. Astral says, this is absolutely horrible news. As an American fan, I found this downright disgraceful. Andretti is something that this sport has needed for years. I'm in a shambles over here. What a bad look for F1. Someone hold down Ben. Well, we're coming to Ben first in a minute. That's why he's on the show tonight. Jackson says, open the gates as well. Jason says, it is an F1 integrity thing or just an anti-Andretti thing? I think it's basically they want to line the pockets. Jose Omega says, Formula 1 social media has been silent today. It has. And then the fans have been more vocal. It's been really interesting. Adam says, I'll echo what Mario Andretti said earlier today. I've got no words. I think we've all got it. Guys, literally have a crypto casino as a title sponsor. Andretti isn't a big enough name. Yep, we're getting on to that, believe me. These guys have great things to say. A Day in the Life says, blame Toto Wolff and his greed. He's a billionaire and control the vote of McLaren and Williams as well. Yeah, he's got the power unit supply there as well. Don't forget with Aston Martin as well. They have a Mercedes power unit. Jason M, it's an anti-American thing, says Jackson as well. Stefano Domenicali needs to resign. I said that. He's been destroying the sport for years as well, especially getting rid of classic circuits for street circuits. It seems like he's got a vendetta against it. But here we go then, boys. This is the one we've all been talking about as well. How disrespectful and insulting was today's statement from Formula One to Andretti? And should we even be surprised by this conclusion, given all the pushback we've seen from many in the series? Ben, you've joined us tonight. We'll start with you.
Let aside the American fans that are pissed off from this news today. Let's just look at this objectively here through the lens of the great history of the world of motorsports and what these names mean to everybody in this great sport that we all love here. When I think of racing, guys, I don't know about you, but the names Visa come to mind. The names like Cash App, names like Stake. Those names come to the front of my mind well before. I mean, who is this Andretti guy anyway? Why should we let him in, right? That seems to be the mentality that Stefano Domenicali has, that Formula One has. They're all willing to take these crypto sponsors, as Jackson mentioned in the chat. They're all willing to take these title sponsors, such as Rich Energy and names like that have no legitimate financial backing to them whatsoever, but they cleared a few checks that are going to be able to clear, and then they, find their way onto a Formula One car. And I mean, that's the kind of name that we welcome into our sport with open arms, because they seem like they have money, and we care about the almighty dollar before we care about our racing heritage and our history. Let me just tell you a few things about who these guys are, these Andretti Global people, for those that might not know. This is the same Andretti Global that provides name recognition in the form of racing royalty, not to mention Formula One's own 1978 World Drivers' Champion, Mario. And keep in mind, again, this is a name trying to come onto the grid in a year where two of Formula One's teams have changed their names to Stake F1 Team Kick Sauber and Visa Cash App RB, whatever that means. This, of course, is the same Andretti Global that is based in America, owned by Americans, not to mention is almost guaranteed to bring in an American driver in a time where F1 is looking to continue to build on the rising popularity with the U.S. audience. This, of course, is the same Andretti Global that has competed and won, by the way, in IndyCar, IMSA, Formula E, Extreme E, and Rallycross. This, of course, is the same Andretti Global that has shown a commitment to being in F1 for over 2.5 years now, organizing their efforts to launch their proposed team shortly after their purchase of Sauber fell through at the 11th hour. This, of course, is the same Andretti Global that has already set up a $200 million headquarters facility in Indiana, which broke ground more than a year ago. This, of course, is the same Andretti Global that plans to operate not just from that 575,000 square foot base in Fishers, but also from Silverstone Cologne, and Charlotte, allowing the team to have a presence in 4 different locations in 3 different countries. This, of course, is the same Andretti Global that announced last January that they plan to partner with Cadillac, bringing the GM brand into the sport as a long-term power unit supplier. This, of course, is the same Andretti Global whose entry has already received approval from the FIA, and by the way, was the only one of the 4 recent applicants to be able to do so. This, of course, is the same Andretti Global who, as you mentioned, Josh, as recently as 2 days ago, it was revealed in The Athletic that they already have parts in production and they already have a car model in the wind tunnel. It seems to me they're taking this pretty seriously. And for what it's worth, let's talk about Formula One for just one moment. This is the same Formula One that just 8 years ago, in 2016, allowed another American entry in Haas into the sport as an 11th team, despite the fact that there were no guarantees that they would be competitive. In fact, they have only finished higher than P8 in the Constructors' Championship one time. And last year, they finished dead last down in P10. So why is it that Haas was able to come in 2016 and been able to stay on the grid without any indication that the team would be competitive, which apparently is so important to a sport where 21 of the 22 races were won by the same team, where the bottom 4 teams, that's Sauber, Williams, Haas, and AlphaTauri, or whatever the heck they're called now, have combined, you know this, guys? They've combined for 6 podium finishes in the last 7 years. You want to talk about being uncompetitive. Where's the gap between the top teams like Red Bull and the teams at the back of the pack, like those 4 I just mentioned? Apparently, either the rules have since been changed since 2016 to gatekeep the sport from everybody because, I mean, heck, if these guys can't get in, I don't know how anybody can. Or the other conclusion you could draw is that the Haas name is somehow more valuable to Formula One than their 1978 world champions. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I don't really think I can top what you said, Ben, because you basically covered every single angle of this very, very disappointing story. And before I get in my answer, we're going to catch up on some comments in the chat room behind the mic. Matthew Owen says, "Good evening, gentlemen. Not much to talk about on tonight's show." Yeah, not really. We're probably not even going to go an hour on this show since there's not really much to talk about tonight. And Jackson Lambert says that Graham Rahal put it perfectly. They just want American fans' money. 3 races on a 4th one, maybe in the way in Chicago, and still no interest in bringing in the most qualified 11th team. And Joe Samaniego says that you 100% agree with everything you said, Ben. And I'm just gonna go over to X and read you a post that Autosport posted. They said the Andretti name in motorsports have accomplished all of this: 1 Formula One World Championship, 12 Formula One wins, 18 Formula One poles, 20 Formula One podium, 6 Indy 500 wins, 1 Daytona 500 win, 9 IndyCar titles, 4 Indy Lights titles, 2 overall wins in the Rolex 24 Daytona, 3 wins in the 12 Hours of Sebring, 1 win at Pikes Peak, 3 NASCAR wins, 1 class win in the 24 Hours of Le Mans. In total, over 350 race wins across various disciplines as individuals and team owners. So I highly encourage you to, if you want to see that for yourself, head over to Autosports X page. And when I list all of those accomplishments, how in the world can you tell me that the Andretti brand is not going to bring any value to the sport? Yeah, we're not. If Andretti's bid was accepted, we're not expecting them to come in right away and blow the doors off of the likes of Red Bulls, Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren, and all those teams and all of that. But over time, a lot of people expected to see Andretti, rise to the occasion and be competitive in Formula One. I personally think Andretti could come in and be somewhat competitive right away, and maybe, just maybe, they'll get towards the top of the grid over time. But after this ruling today, it doesn't look like that's going to happen, unfortunately. And I just thought the statement that Formula One put out trying to explain why Andretti wasn't able to get this bid, I thought it was just extremely insulting. And if I was Michael Andretti, I don't even know if I would put up with this much longer, because Formula One is basically just spit right in his face and keep moving goalposts. I know at first, and Andretti had to meet this requirement. They met it, and then Formula One just kept adding on, and they're like, "No, you're gonna have to do this and this." And Michael Andretti did that, and after that, they were like, "Nope, that's still not enough. You have to do this and this," and it just kept going on and on and on. And I guess it just reached a head today, and we finally got our conclusion. So I guess with all the goalposts being moved, we really shouldn't be surprised by this conclusion. We'd hope that Formula One would come to their senses and realize that they need Andretti. I really think that that Formula One needs Andretti a lot more than Andretti needs Formula One. If this is the end of the road for Michael Andretti and his Formula One ambitions, it wouldn't surprise me if he decided to throw in the towel here, because I'd really want to be in a place where I'd be wanted and appreciated. And it really seems like that Andretti is not appreciated in the Formula One world.
Closed. The shop is closed. This is the most qualified privateer in the world of motorsport to come in. Apart from maybe you would have a possible case for Roger Penske and the Penske Group, but I was just thinking while Ben was giving his answer and Kobe too. Formula One was built on privateers. They had a name: the Garage Easters, the Coopers, the Brabhams, the Williamses, the McLarens, the Van Walls. Where are they now? We have Stake F1. We have V-Carb or whatever. What did we call them last week? VARB or whatever we're going to call them through the year. The second Red Bull team. So one team's got one body has two teams. It's just terrible. We've been talking about this story ever since it began, and I think we talked about it. I can't remember if it was before Christmas or just after. And I said, I'm just bored with the story now. It needs to come to a conclusion. Finally, we've got that. But unfortunately, it's not the way that anybody wanted. And so Josh's point at the very top of this whole segment was, I don't remember a time in my years of watching Formula One, which goes all the way back to 1990 when I was 4, that this has put an arm around all the fans. No one has been, no point ever really has everyone been in agreement that this is a good thing or a wrong thing. Everyone is in the same camp here, it seems, from everyone on social media, the journos, the F1 proper journos that are in the paddock every week. It's just a really, really bad look. There's a lot of people bashing the FIA. Now, don't forget that the FIA granted the entry. It is Formula One that have stopped this. Stefano Domenicali, as we mentioned, and the Liberty Group have stopped this from happening. But as I said, there couldn't have been an any more capable privateer. And as we mentioned, every hurdle he's been given, Michael, in that team and that group, they've passed it with flying colours. Josh, you mentioned the engine thing. It's absolute nonsense. They've got Renault. Renault have said, we will supply you with engines until such time that you want to switch or whatever. And they've got Cadillac and General Motors ready. The Red Bull thing that you gave as an example with Ford coming in, that's just a badging exercise. Let's be honest. There's going to be no Ford really Ford presence in that, apart from the sticker on the side of the engine cover. Red Bull Powertrains is a thing, and it will continue to be a thing. But Jackson said it in the comment, we've got 3 races. There's this Chicago rumblings going on because someone else had a great idea and put a race there and it was quite successful. And they went, well, I think we'll have a piece of that, please. And I'm going to try and take it away from NASCAR or add to it. There's going to be a lot of people switching off from Formula One, I feel like, next year. On, of course, Kobe and Ben, your side of the pond and around the world, because, as I said, shop's closed. There's no point even trying anymore, unless now we get, 4 or 5 years down the road. When's the next big rule change coming? 26, isn't it, I think?
26,
when Audi is coming in. When the Elon Musk team, because let's face it, he's got the most money, comes some massive privateer with the hugest money pot that's got no more motorsport caliber or pedigree at all, suddenly gets this entry that the FIA keeps saying, we've got room for more teams, and we're just not... To use a Murray Walker line from Monaco or James Hunt line from Monaco, we just don't seem to be getting one.
I'll tell you one thing.
To bounce off Matt's point one more time. I don't understand how you can make the argument. What is it, point 15 that they said in their statement that they don't like the fact that they're coming in with a customer. Yeah, here we go. The need for the compulsory power unit supply potentially over a period of several seasons would be damaging to the prestige and standing of a championship. So if that's the case, why are Haas still allowed to be in Formula One?
Oh,
they don't build their own engine. Williams doesn't build their own engine. I mean,
it's
McLaren
pointless.
doesn't build their own engine. They use Mercedes, and I mean, I know they had the works thing going with Honda for a few years, but that was a disaster. But almost all of their success before Mercedes came back into the sport as a work century was with Mercedes engines, and then they coexisted for a few years. Now they're coexisting again. But why are they allowed to stay? If you're that concerned about if it were really a bad look from a championship, why would any of those teams still be allowed to compete? And we would have a 4-team championship, or however many power unit suppliers we have now, and we could maybe add a couple more going forward if Andretti brought Cadillac in, I guess, or Red Bull brought Ford back, or Audi's, I guess, supposed to come in. I mean, those would be the only teams that would be allowed to run. So you not only would have to keep Andretti from coming in, you would have to kick the Haas's and Williams and McLarens of the world out. It makes no sense.
Yeah.
F1 stock down more than 1% today, says Jackson as well. This is reminding me a lot of Toyota as well. We'll get on to behind the mic now as well. Television ratings for Formula One ESPN in Indianapolis and Nazareth, Pennsylvania is going to take a nose dive. Indeed. Right, this is reminding me a lot of Toyota. When they came into the sport in 2002, they built a car for 2001 and went testing all the way around the world. They came in as prepared as could be. They threw all the money at it, and they never took a win. They never took anything. Because they just didn't. They couldn't get it right because it was such a production of doing it from 2 different locations, Japan and then their base, I believe, in the UK. So it didn't work. Cologne, yeah, thank you there, man. So it didn't work. But you've got Andretti here who have been going for years, who know how to build an open wheel formula car because they've done it in 3 different generations now across all different types of electric, normal, aspirated, and now hybrid with IndyCar. They know how to build a car. They know how to build engines as well because they've done that in the past as well. They know what to do. They are, as you said, a very successful privateer team. And I don't like what's going on. Just bring up, Kobe, could you please bring up those point list again? And I'll go through here. Now, look to number 17. The addition of an 11th team would place an operational burden on race promoters, would subject some of them to significant costs, and would reduce the technical, operational, and commercial spaces of the other competitors. Now, basically, what that means is that there's not enough room for them in the paddock.
Rubbish.
Martin Brundle said this on a Sky F1 news article earlier on. I put a tweet out about it. We'll just take the graphic away for a second because this is quite a big point. We'll get all your facial reactions to this. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but didn't we have an 11th team on the grid for the entire second half last year filming a movie which took up a garage space with 2 cars in it with loads of tyres? They wanted to make it as realistically possible. It took up space in the paddock. They were on the grid at Silverstone. There is room for an 11th team. Martin's saying, oh, well, all the tracks and all that, they haven't got room for the pit lane. In 2010, we had 24 cars on the grid, and we still race at 70% of those tracks.
Josh, can I just put it one way to people watching? Think about it this way. Brad Pitt got a super license before Colton Herta. Let that hit. I'm serious. That's what happened.
By the sounds of things, all of what they've done for that film has been scrapped.
Yes, they have. We learned this weekend at Rolex that the whole reason they were filming there this weekend is because they've changed the script. It's now no longer going to be about a driver who's retiring from Formula One. It's about a driver who's coming back to Formula One to teach the rookie 2 things. So the entire thing of last year has been scrapped. So, it physically makes me go mad. Because, right, here's the thing. In 2010, as I said, we had 24 cars on the grid. At that time, Silverstone was the worst pit lane in Formula One because it was on the old and Brazil, yeah, because it was the smallest start-finish straight. The pit lanes were tiny. They managed 24 cars. Both of those tracks now have brand new pit buildings. So much so that both of them have held world endurance car races, which, correct me if I'm wrong, have a field of over 30. It just makes you want to scream because it is bone dead stupid. Can we bring on that graphic just one more time, please? Because this is what also annoyed me. It was about the financial thing as well. Where is it? Which article is it? Here we go. We are not
Okay.
able to identify any material expected positive effect on the CRH financial results as a key indicator of the pure commercial value of the championship. What that relating to is the prize money fund that is segregated between Formula One and then the 10 teams. So they all get a slice of the pie. Formula One get a larger slice of the pie and the teams then divvy up the rest. Now, at the moment, it's quite an equal agreement because in 2010, we had the Concord Agreement that had to be re-signed as well after all that drama and the breakaway threat in 2009. I'll tell you what, Keanu Reeves does a brilliant thing in that Braun documentary explaining it all. So I highly anticipate going and watching that. But basically, that Concord Agreement was then changed in 2010 to allow 4 more teams in, because then we also had Haas coming in 2016. So it's been changed before, and you now have to pay a $200 million anti-adulation fee, whatever it is. And Andretti said, okay, no problem. We'll pay that. So the FIA have approved it. They're going to pay the $200 million so that nobody loses out on money. They have proved that they're competitive. They've proved they can build a car in 2 different years of regulations for 25 and 26. They're bringing in GM as a manufacturer on the grid. There's room for them in the pit lane. There's room for them to travel around the world if there's room for movie cars. Why aren't they on the grid? It's simple. They just don't want them. It is so annoying. I literally never disagree with Martin Brundle, but today I'm disagreeing with him. And any other journalist who says, "Oh, well, they're not ready," rubbish. They are ready. It's really angered me because you're seeing who's been paid off and you're seeing who's working for Liberty Media. This is all because it's Liberty Media. They are killing Formula One. They really are. And Stefano Domenicali, who is now taking over as the big boss, he, in my opinion, is killing the sport. More street circuits, longer calendars. He is pushing everybody to the brink. It is literally like he's trying to take revenge on the sport. Because when he was at Ferrari, not many people were agreeing with him. It's like he's now got the keys to the candy shop and he's taken a tank in there. It's killing the sport. I don't know what's going to break first: the fans, the teams, or the bank balance of Formula One. Because as soon as it gets too much, the whole thing will crumble.
Josh,
There needs to be, quickly, sorry, Ben, before you come in, there was a tweet from Scott McLaughlin today about bringing IndyCar to Europe. The IndyCar people, and they need to have, at St. Pete or even before, this is the time. We talked about, this has been talked about for times of yore. Remember back in the early 90s when Bernie was getting a bit twitchy about IndyCar going to Australia and Brazil, and he went, "No, you can't. It's a national series. You can't really go outside of your base." And he got a little bit sketchy, and obviously Mansell went over and wiped the floor, won the championship, and then it kind of fizzled out. This is the time for IndyCar to absolutely strike, and Michael Andretti needs to get with Roger Penske and absolutely spearhead this. If you don't let me in, I'll show you.
Yeah, Ben?
But it won't happen.
Yeah, well, I mean, Matt, you're exactly right. But the problem is IndyCar's got enough problems of their own here when they've got a manufacturer threatening to pull out and just run Ilmore badge down. I mean, they're a mess of their own right now. I think it would be a great time, but we've got enough problems we got to figure out here with our series based here in the States, and trying to make it international at this point. Because I agree with you. Otherwise, it would be an excellent time to do that. Josh, to get back to your point, I think the answer is all of the above. I think the teams and the drivers are burned out, looking at these 24 race calendars. I know the last several years we've had, like, China's been canceled every year for 4 years running now. We had Imola get canceled last year because of the flooding. I know, but we've had a race or two drop off. We never quite, hit that mark, but they want to do 24 races. I think they want to do as many as 30 races. They want to have it. They've used the term 30 Super Bowls. I mean, if the Super Bowl, which I know is coming up here in a week and a half here in the States, if this Super Bowl was 30 times a year, would it mean as much? Would it be as special? I mean, the product is getting, the specialty of the product is getting diluted when you have this many races. And I'll tell you from a fan's perspective as well. I said in my tweet and on Threads and everywhere today that, I'm sure, when we draw closer to the start of the season, I might feel differently. It'll be nice to have on in the background. The days of me wake up at 1 a.m. and up till 3 a.m. for the races in Japan and in Asia, those days are gone for now. I have it's tough for me to think of a time in my life since I became a Formula One fan when I really started to fall in love with the sport about a decade ago. It's been very, very hard for me to look back on a time where I've been more disillusioned with the sport, and I've been disillusioned with many aspects of the sport my entire life. This is just a whole nother level to me. And the things that they're saying. I'm sorry, have we lost? Everybody disappeared for a second. Are we back?
No.
I think I'm back.
Yeah, I'm back.
Yeah, I'm back.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, just to your point about
It's Liberty, the Color Blockers.
Yeah, there you go. Your point about
Liberty reporting on stream.
Your point, Martin Brundle, and specifically the comments that he made. I know he's not the only one, but I'd have minimal respect for Formula One and Stefano Domenicali if he just came out and said the quiet part out loud. We do not want you right now. We're not accepting new teams. It doesn't matter how much money you bring. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're racing royalty. It doesn't matter if you have a car in the wind tunnel already. It doesn't matter if you've hit every single requirement every single time that we've moved the goalpost, because we simply don't want you here. If they just came out and said those words, you know what? I could at least respect that position just a tiny little bit. But that's the ultimate reality. We know that that's the situation that's going on here. And they continue to say, oh, they're not qualified enough, or they haven't shown that they're serious enough, or they haven't shown that they're going to be competitive. Need I remind you, 21 of 22 races, all but one race last year was won by the same team, and 19 of those 21 by the same driver, yet you're concerned about competition in your sport. Give me a break. I think you have between the lack of parity between before you start worrying about a team that's supposed to just show up and start competing with Red Bull straight out of the gate. Give me a break. I'm fed up.
Red Bull isn't even a works team in Formula One. It's a customer team at the moment as well, with it being gone as well over to with the V-carb, whatever it is these days. But yeah, let's kick out Andretti, but let's have V-carb and stage. You know, it just makes. It's just, that's the commentator's thing on me, because I'm going to say stupid names. I could be saying legends like Andretti. And speaking of the 1978 Formula One world champion, Marco Andretti did respond to the news of his son's team getting rejected. In a few words, he said he feels devastated and won't say anything else because he can't find another word to describe how he feels besides devastated. I think we speak with everyone, Mario, when we agree with you. Available on December the 12th, 2023. To offer an team and F1 to present its application, but says Andretti never took them up on this offer. From Andretti and Cadillac earlier on this afternoon. Andretti Cadillac has reviewed the information Formula One Management Limited has shared and strongly disagree with its contents. Andretti and Cadillac are two successful global motorsports organizations committed to placing a genuine American works team in F1, competing alongside the world's best. We are proud of the significant progress we have already made on developing a highly competitive car and power unit with an experienced team behind it, and our work continues at pace. Andretti Cadillac would also like to acknowledge and thank the fans who have expressed their support. Yep, and if that meeting did take place, I can tell you it would be in a boxing ring in Saudi Arabia, fight exclusive to Sky Sports F1, and it would end with Stefano Domenicali being on the floor in a KO. Now, Day in the Life says, Apex F1 was on the grid, and F1 completely, absolutely, totally. So realistically speaking, guys, do you think an in-person meeting would change any minds? And should Michael Andretti just abandon all hopes of being in F1 at this point? Josh is on a massive preach right now as well. I am angry. A British F1 fan, where 9 of the 10 teams are based, I am angry that they've gatekept it for so long. I really am. I feel like it's a part of Prime. But anyway, we'll start with you, Matt, on this one.
I think, I don't know, I think there'll be some dust settling time gone now that we've had that statement that you just read, Josh, come out. Of course, the first F1 Grand Prix in the States is in Miami in, when's that, April, beginning of May-ish time, from off the top of my head.
Sprint as well.
Yeah. Of course it is. If Michael Andretti turns up in the paddock, is he going to be one of that shot, the sort of movie kind of shot of him walking down the paddock with all the team bosses looking on going, oh, who's this guy? Kind of deal. Or is he just going to stay away? I feel like we'll hear some more from Michael once we get a bit closer to the IndyCar season beginning at St. Pete. Perhaps there'll be some dust settling period. We've got F1 testing coming up in the not too distant future. So I feel like this story might just go away a little bit over the next couple of weeks. Is it completely dead though? Well, who knows? But if F1 teams have got this pie they don't want to give any pieces away to, then it looks like for the moment, I don't think anything's going to change.
Yeah, before I give my answer, I'm going to catch up on some comment in the chat here. If they'll display on the screen, internet's running a little slow tonight, but Astro Police said all excellent points. Great team. You guys are winding me up. Might have to grab a pitchfork. I will say on behalf of everyone at Grid Network, we definitely don't want to see any violence take place. But we do support peaceful protest. So if you use your pitchfork in a peaceful manner, by all means, go ahead and let your voice be heard. And Jackson Lambros says, unfortunately, does kind of make sense with the lack of an original power unit would be these issues if it was an HRC/Honda partnership. My internet's running a little slow tonight, guys. And Joe Samniego says that Formula One will survive, but fans is patient, especially in the United States with the motorsport and stick and ball sports options. It won't last. Yeah, Joe, I totally agree with that right there. Mm-hmm. And let me see. Do you have any more comments? Yeah, I'll save the rest of the comments for later. But to answer the question that you asked, Josh, I really don't think an in-person meeting would have really changed any minds at all in this situation. Formula One really had their minds made up that they weren't going to let Andretti join them. And to be honest, I think Formula One had their minds made up months ago that Andretti wasn't just going to be able to enter the sport. So they felt like, it was time to just bring it to a head, just put it out there, and that we're not going to let Formula One come. But to Ben's point, I would really appreciate and respect, Stefano Domenicali and everyone in management over there a lot more if they would just say the quiet part out loud that we don't want Andretti Global to be in Formula One because we're afraid that they're going to change the status quo of what it's always been here in Formula One. I really think that they're fearful of what Andretti could do in this sport, especially what we've seen the Andretti brand do across various disciplines of motorsport. So I really don't think a meeting face-to-face with Michael Andretti, Stefano Domenicali, and everyone at Formula One, I really don't think it would change anything. And the second part of that question you asked, should Michael Andretti just abandon all his hopes of being in F1 at this point? That's obviously up to him. But if it were me, I'd be thinking, like, why bother any further? It'd be like, we've done absolutely everything they've asked of us, and we're still not good enough for them. So, like, why should we continue to waste our time, on this project that they're simply not going to allow us to have? You like I was saying earlier, you want to be in a place where you're wanted. In Formula One, it doesn't seem like they want Andretti at all. So if I were Michael Andretti, I don't know if I can continue to, beat a dead horse, and just continue to hope that, someday that they're going to let me in or wait for a regime change at some point. And maybe that a new leader of Formula One will decide to let him in. Yeah, but at the end of the day, is this what Michael Andretti wants to do? And we'll see what he decides moving forward.
Kobe, I get what you're saying, and I completely understand. I mean, I would certainly feel that way if I was in this position. I don't have hundreds of millions of dollars to try to invest in putting an effort like this together. But I will say this about Michael Andretti. I mean, if the last 2+ years now are any indication, he doesn't quit. He doesn't give up. He doesn't give in. And I think that if Michael were to just sit back and say, all right, we hear you. We're not going to go forward with this anymore. Clearly, we're not welcome here, and waves the white flag, it would be admitting defeat. And I don't think that's in Michael Andretti's DNA. Now, looking ahead, they have said that they're going to keep the door open for 2028 when Cadillac and GM come in. And they've said that before. First, it was $200 million. Then it was $600 million. Then they had to, show evidence that the team was actually operating. I mean, they've moved the goalposts so many times that I don't trust them at this point. I also don't necessarily trust that. I mean, Michael has a car in the wind tunnel, for crying out loud, but he wasn't willing to make an in-person meeting. That just seems bizarre to me. It seems like there's something else going on there. I'm trying not to put the tinfoil hat on too much because I don't like doing that. But, I severely doubt that if that was the one thing standing in the way of this entry, that Michael couldn't have found a way to at least reschedule an in-person meeting or send some team member to an in-person meeting instead. So that seems quite ridiculous to me. But I don't know. Maybe if you continue to hold out a slight little bit of hope, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, this might give Colton Herta time to win the IndyCar championship in either 25, 26, or 27, and then he's got the full 40 points needed for a super license, and maybe we can finally put this, our long national or international nightmare will be over in 2028, and Colton Herta will be on the grid finally with Andretti Global. Maybe there's a slight slimmer of hope that's still left there, but I completely agree. I completely understand with what you're saying there, Kobe, as well. If it were me in this situation, I don't know that I would have the strength and the willpower to continue trying to put this effort forward. But I think Michael Andretti does. And I think that, with how far he's come already, how much he's invested already, to just wave the white flag at this point, I don't think is in his DNA. So I think he's going to continue to fight this and ride this as long as the wheels are still on it until the wheels fall off. And because they've left the door slightly open again, I think we might be revisiting this conversation multiple times over the next few years.
Well, white flag seems to be missing in America at the moment, so I think we'll be okay for
We'll
a little bit longer. Yeah. NASCAR debuts on Netflix this week. I'm halfway through episode 1, but my sleep schedule's still destroyed from Daytona. And I'm up during the night again, so it's a strange life I lead. The Clash is Sunday, so good opportunity for them indeed. Yeah, and we'll see how the amazing, globally talented, big name for Formula One of Haas do in the Clash and at Daytona. I mean, they're going to take yet another victory. They're so popular around the world in a NASCAR, aren't they, at the moment? Oh, wait a minute. Sorry, I was in Fairyland. Shock horror, the healthiest motorsport series in the world is NASCAR? It does seem like it's NASCAR at the moment, doesn't it? And Amen Ben says Astral Police as well. Now, Ben is leaving us after this one as well. Oh, I'm not frozen. I'm right here. Everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you okay. It's just the camera was
yeah, the camera's frozen. Yeah, we can hear you well.
Oh, well, that's always great, isn't it? It's something's affecting all our equipment this evening, it seems. So I'll make this short and sweet. they're getting to us. All right, can you hear me now? Is that okay? Am I back?
Yeah.
No?
Yeah. Your camera's is frozen, but we can hear you.
Okay, right. I'll turn it off then, and I'll become radio until it's fixed. Ben, thanks very much for joining us. What's your closing argument then? Do you reckon that there could be an option that Andretti maybe take over Haas? That was a rumor that's been going around. Or do you reckon that we're going to have to wait for a long, long time to have them back in?
Well, Josh, I'm glad you brought that up because I remember Bernie Ecclestone, and Bernie has many, many flaws. Don't get me wrong. I would be willing to welcome him back a little bit more with open arms if he weren't so, insane on certain issues as well. But one thing that I remember Bernie saying to Gene Haas is, why don't you just buy a team? And specifically, I guess you had Manor and Caterham at the time. And again, people forget that we had 11 teams as recently as 8 years ago because Haas's first season was Manor's last. Gene comes in, he starts his brand new team from scratch, and Manor end up going into administration. 2016 is their last year. And I think Gene really sat back and thought, you know what? Bernie was probably right about that. It might have been easier just to go to Manor and try to have a conversation about buying the team. And now I look at where Haas are, and they've had, several down years in a row here. I know they really looked like they were coming into their own in 2018, and then the Rich Energy saga happened, and it's just been all downhill from there. I've got a feeling that it would make the most sense if Gene just said, let's forget about this. It was a fun little experiment. It didn't work out. Let's focus on the NASCAR team. And by the way, the NASCAR team needs some focus right now because they're not doing so well either. Let's focus on that. Let's go back to the basics and what we know best. And let's hand this team off and give a head start to a guy who is clearly very passionate about this sport and wants to be here and wants to run competitively here. I think that would just put all the, and then you have your 10th entry ready to go. It's not like you're expanding the grid and you don't need to jump through all these hoops. I say that they probably still make them jump through more hoops than they have to because this is Formula One and they probably just don't want the name there to begin with. But I think that would be a solution, a creative solution that would bring everybody together on this issue and would probably make the most sense in the long run. And I'll answer Rodney's question here, and then I'll get on out of here, get ready to tape Women in Motorsports with Joe and Isha. Serious question. Since Liberty Media and the push for a new Drive to Survive audience, I've noticed calls for making F1 nationalistic. Why? Not entirely sure what you mean by that. Are you talking like, I don't know, Matt can speak to the A1 Grand Prix a little bit. Is that what you mean by nationalistic? Like having each country put their own, I don't know.
It was originally, wasn't it?
I've heard murmurs that, they want to bring A1 Grand Prix back. I've heard rumors that they want to try to incorporate motorsports into the Olympics a little bit. But I must confess, I haven't heard those rumors specifically when it comes to Formula One themselves. And then I guess you might be talking about Michael as a driver here. I know that his stint with McLaren didn't go so well in 1993. He did have just some guy named Ayrton Senna as his teammate. You might have heard of him, so I'm sure that was not the easiest.
And some guy called Hackett that came in and took his seat.
Yeah, there you go. Yes, I mean, you can talk about how poorly Michael Ray did have one podium. I think it might have actually been ultimately his last race before he lost that season. Seems the only thing Andretti has going is dad's name and nationalistic support. Well, I mean, he definitely has those things. I mean, I think you can just go back and listen to the entire first 47 minutes of this show and listen to some of the other things that we think he has and brings to the table as well. And this point about being a back marker. I mean, again, I don't know how much more you can expect from a brand new team. I mean, I thought like when Roman Grosjean finished 6th in Australia, I still vividly remember him coming over the radio and saying, guys, listen to me. This is a win for us. This is a win. And it was, because for a brand new team, I think it was the first brand new team since Toyota in the early 2000s to come in and score points.
Yeah, on debut.
I mean, it was an incredible run, and they only finished in the points a few more times later that season. They followed it up with 5th in Bahrain, I think, the very next race. And then they kind of came back down to earth a little bit. But, Haas looked like, I mean, you think of where Haas is now. I think of where Haas was in 2016 and then built on that to finish 5th. I mean, it was a handful of self-inflicted errors. I think they could have been the best of the rest and beaten Renault for P4 in 2018. I mean, they were that strong that year. But I look at that team and I think to myself, I mean, that you're telling me Andretti couldn't do that? You're telling me that's the standard that we're setting here. Andretti couldn't, with all the resources that they're pulling in. I would not put results like that past them. And then on top of that, I don't know how much more you can expect. I mean, I'll say it again. 21 of 22 races won by the same team. I mean, you could make the argument Mercedes aren't competitive right now. You could make the argument Ferrari isn't competitive. They had a less than 5% win rate last year. They only won one race. They're not very competitive. But nobody's competitive because nobody can compete with Red Bull. How are you defining competitive here? Because it sure isn't where Haas is here in 2024 and the last couple of years in particular, and a day in my life adding, will Haas survive the next 2 years?
No.
I don't know. I mean, well, I think there's a compelling argument that it could be no, but everybody signed the Concord agreement. Everybody has, sponsors and everything. Haas certainly, isn't in as good a shape as they once were. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, Gene has been on record multiple times saying, listen, if we can't get to that point eventually, where we're competing for glory and success like we do on the NASCAR side of things, then we have to take a step back and wonder what we're doing here, which again, I think is even more reason to believe, why would he not just say, clearly it isn't working, let's hand the team off to somebody who wants to make this work. And I think that's a solution that works for everybody.
That first comment as well about what do they need to do about being competitive. That's the problem. As we discussed earlier on in the show, they've hit every single mark that that Formula One have asked of them and the teams have asked of them. You can't come in unless you pay money. Okay, we'll pay. How much? We'll pay. You can't come in unless you've got an engine. Okay, look, we're bringing some manufacturers in. We're bringing 2 different areas in, Cadillac and GM. What more do you want? There isn't anything else they can do. It's coming down to the fact is that they just don't want them in Formula One. And I think I figured out, guys, what it is they're missing. they're not sponsored by anything. I mean, they're not sponsored by OnlyFans. They're not sponsored by a Twitch. They're not sponsored by YouTube. They're not sponsored by any naughty websites. They're not sponsored by something that, you know, has got the integrity of Formula One behind it as well. And I think they should look to the great teams like Surtees, who had Durex on the front of their cars and got taken off television for 1976 and denied us that great season being able to be witnessed on television as well. So, in terms of it, where do you want to go in Formula One? What do you want to do? I mean, Stewart came in 1970. This is another thing as well, because I know, Ben, you've got to go to record the show. They said that they don't think that they can be competitive by building a car for 25 regulations and then doing a whole nother one for 26 regulations, when Jackie Stewart did exactly the same thing in 1997, built a car for the 97 rules and built a car for the 98 rules, and won races. That team won, and then became Jaguar, then became Red Bull. So it doesn't make sense.
Go
ahead, Matt.
Can I just Rodney's question there? Why should there be, or why does there have to be? It doesn't have to be, but there is one, and it wants to come. And Formula One are saying, well, no, you can't come. So there doesn't have to be. If there wants to be a Team USA, and there was one in A1GP, the likes of Scott Speed drove for them, and Jonathan Summerton and Ryan Hunter-Ray, but they weren't very competitive in the spec series. Andretti have more money put together in this, and they've not got anywhere, than Manor, Caterham, HRT put together. I know they were running to a cost cap in 2010, but it's all about the cash and the backing and the manufacturer support, so they've got everything going for them, and the door's still being closed in their face. And this is what we just can't get our heads around.
To Rodney's point here, I mean, I don't know about you. Well, Josh and Matt, you're in the UK. Kobe, I don't know about you. I see more Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari, McLaren stuff than I see Haas gear right now.
Yeah.
I mean, I see McLaren jackets everywhere. I see people in Ferrari hats. I don't see very much Haas gear out there. But we have an American team right now, and I think if that American team were running well, there would be some support. But there has still been a boom here in the United States when it comes to Formula One popularity, with Haas being, in some years, in some cases, the worst team on the grid. And that's not hyperbole. That they were literally the worst team on the grid 2 of the last 3 years. And yet this sport is still succeeding in America the way it is. Now, I know Andretti would be even more American, deeply American than Haas is, because obviously Gene is an American, but Gunther Steiner's not, and they don't employ American drivers. But the reality of it is we still have a team based here. We still have a home team that if they were to ever by some miracle win a race, we would hear the Star Spangled Banner on the podium. And yet we still have this boom here. So I don't know if that's necessarily the case there, but that, you know, all hopes and dreams ride on Andretti. And if Andretti, you know, aren't competitive right out of the gate, then they're going to lose viewership. Are they going to lose more viewership than they're going to lose because of what they're doing right now? Because I can tell, I mean, I said it earlier in the show, I'm not very enthusiastic about this sport right now. They don't want Andretti coming in. I guess they don't want my viewership. I mean, that's the way I'm feeling. And
yeah.
We can keep. I mean, we're approaching an hour already, guys. I apologize here. I don't mean to monopolize your show.
Jackson,
come on, but
sorry, man. Jackson says, "Put my sponsor. I beg you." So if we can find Jackson's comment somewhere. Jose says, "Hi guys, this is discussing on Big F1 since the mid '90s as well." Yeah, all of us here as well. This year, I'm thinking just dropping this. They don't care. See, this is the thing. This is what the fans say. They don't like what has happened. They don't like it. So I think we better move on, because as I said, we are 55 minutes in.
Let me just say one more thing, and then I'll get on out of here. I just to Rodney in the chat specifically, and anybody else who is maybe trying to look at this from F1's perspective. They've said that they're open to as many as 12 teams and 24 cars.
Yeah.
If Andretti can't get in, how can anyone else?
That's what I said.
Why are you saying the doors are open if a team like this and I think I saw a comment in, has Andretti ever built any car or parts? They have a model in the wind tunnel right now. That is how serious they are about this. They have already started building that with no guarantee, and it was proven today, no guarantee that their entry would be approved by Formula One. Yet they've already made it that far. If that doesn't show how serious you are about this, I don't know what does. So if they can't get in, then what's the point of having those 2 extra spots? And we'll leave it there.
Absolutely fantastic. Ben, thank you very much for joining us. You've got to get off now to record Women in Motorsports as well, where hopefully that'll be a topic we're discussing on this show soon with a female driver in Formula One. So
thank you, Josh. And, record 9 women in the field at the Rolex 24. Great to see that. So we're going to be discussing that. We've got a couple of female drivers familiars of the Arca Menard series that are going to be full-time at Venturini. And then we're going to revisit the Ava Rose Mahindra AI controversy as well, which you guys talked about here on Grid Tonight a few weeks back, and then an update on the F1 Academy field as well. So that will tape tonight. Will be up probably either Thursday or Friday sometime in the afternoon. So look forward to that.
I will indeed. Thank you very much, Ben. Take care.
Ben.
See you later.
Take care. Thank you, guys.
See you, Ben.
So we'll continue wrapping up with that story as it develops. It's going to be very much a hot topic throughout the year as well. If we do have hots or nots tonight as well, that's going to be a bit longer than already. We're already an hour into the show. That's how big this news has been. I want to say thank you to everybody right now who's got involved in the chat to give us your views. That's what this show is for. And thanks for reading the comments, says Jose as well. Pleasure as always. That's what we're here for, delivering the news and getting your views as well on screen. Moving on then to our second story of the evening, an hour later. Hopefully we won't be on this for too much longer. A major sports car bombshell late in silly season has emerged, and the defending series champion Brodie Kostecki will miss at least the season opening Bathurst 500 next month. Now, according to Andrew Van Leeuwen from speedcafe.com, Kostecki may not drive for Erebus Motorsport again, missing at least the start of the season, with the potential of being sidelined the whole year. This report added this report added that there have been rumours of tension between Kostecki and Erebus, led by CEO Barry Ryan. Link to the scoop is in the video description as well. Whatever's affecting our equipment tonight is affecting my laptop now as well. The script keeps going up and down. So sorry if I'm reading anything out of my line, everybody. Motorsport.com adds there have been ongoing tension for a while after Kostecki and the team had a major falling out before the race weekend at the Bend Motorsport Park. On that weekend, Kostecki swept all 3 races at the Bend, only days after coming back from making his NASCAR Cup Series debut at Indianapolis in the United States. Photo courtesy there of Supercars. Now, Erebus put out this statement saying, despite the media reports we've all seen, Kostecki remains a contracted driver with the team. Kostecki has allegedly indicated that he's not available for the Bathurst 500 on February 23rd to 25th. So Todd Hazelwood is set to replace him for at least the opening round of the season. Kobe and Matt still with me here tonight. How stunning is it to see the defending champion set for a split less than a month before the season begins?
Like I said in our Grid Network private chat, this was a supercars earthquake, something that you would never expect to see less than a month before the season. And here we are, on Sunday on the Grid Live wrap-up show. We just showed our grid preseason poll of how we think the grid ranking is going to go in 2024, and towards the top of the list, who is there but Supercars Brodie Kostecki? We're thinking that he's going to be one of the top competitors in the grid ranking this year, considering his championship winning season last year. And now we don't even know if Brodie Kostecki is even going to be in the grid ranking in 2024. Just shows you how quickly things change in motorsports. Yeah, like when I first saw this report from speedcafe.com, I had to do a double take because I was thinking April is not till a few months away. I thought it was an April Fool's Day joke, something that you wouldn't. This is just something you would not expect to see at all. Like, I'm shocked because they literally just came off winning the championship. Erebus Motorsport, Brodie Kostecki, Betty Clemenco, Barry Ryan, everybody involved in the organization. They worked so hard to get to the point of winning this championship. And with Shane Van Gisbergen leaving for NASCAR this year, I was thinking, there's a good chance that Brodie Kostecki and Erebus could, run it back and win another Supercars championship. And now, the team is confirming that Todd Hazelwood's going to be in Brodie's car to start the season in the Bathurst 500. And now we don't even know if Brodie is going to be in this car this year. Yeah, according to a report that Josh talked about, Brodie and the team are headed towards a split where we're not going to see Brodie driving for Erebus, but the team is suggesting that Brodie is still under contract with Erebus, and we could potentially see him later in the season. But it doesn't really seem like that right now. It's just a really stunning development that we've seen come about. And Shane Van Gisbergen within the last hour has put out a comment on the Brodie Kostecki story. SVG says that what a sad situation to read about in Australia right now with Brodie Kostecki. I went through a similar situation 10 or so years ago, not being able to say much. The team in the media set a narrative that's out of your control. It's not fun. And SVG offered his full support for Brodie and said he hoped that it works out the correct way with Brodie enjoying driving race cars in 2024. So Shane Van Gisbergen, all the way from North Carolina, has fallen. The big story happening down under. Before turning over to Matt, going to catch up on some comments here in the chat room. Jose, thanks for reading the comment. And he said, greetings from Panama. Glad to have you watching our show tonight, Jose. And Adam Lemeries says best wishes to Brodie Kostecki as well. And Ben, and then Ben, who was just on our shows, thanking everyone for all the comments in the chat. And Adam Lemeries, just like me, when he heard the news, I was absolutely surprised. Like I said, Adam, I thought it was some April Fool's Day joke that had been published, a few months ahead of time, because this is just stunning, like a major bombshell, as Josh said at the beginning. And then Joe Samniego has said, we talked about World Rally Championship having an identity crisis, and you're also saying the supercars have a bigger identity crisis without the past three champions gone from other series. I'm actually glad you brought that up, Joe, because we're gonna be talking about that in just a little bit. But first, I want to hear what Matt has to say on this question.
Yeah, we'll come to Joe's point there in a second. I was like you, Kobe. It was one of the first things I saw on what day are we now? Wednesday, almost Thursday. Tuesday morning, whenever it was, when it got posted into our grid chat, I was like, this is not the news I was expecting to wake up to this morning. We know that Brodie, post Adelaide, which was end of November, same weekend as the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, had tonsillitis. He's had his tonsils removed. And the first thing I thought was, surely that can't be still hampering him, because that was, 8 weeks ago. I've got a funny feeling somewhere in the back of my mind there was a shoulder injury at some point, but maybe I'm misthinking that up. And then I was like, well, the stories come from AVL, Andrew Van Leeuwen. He generally doesn't miss on a story. It took Erebus pretty much 24 hours to get that statement out that we just shared on screen before. What does it mean? We're going to get to it in a moment in the second part of this segment, but it's massive for supercars, and SVG throwing his weight behind Brodie. Scott McLaughlin's, I think, done the same, and it's kind of Scott going to IndyCar, which has kind of kicked this off, hasn't it, with SVG going to NASCAR, Brodie having that run last year and potentially more to come. We know Richard Childress was at Adelaide to watch Brodie win the championship last year, and they've got ties. Those teams have got ties, and maybe those ties have intermingled into Brodie. But it's going to be interesting to see how this pans out over the next couple of weeks. There's going to be a test day for that team and others next week. I believe it's at Queensland Raceway, so we'll have to see what happens there, and then obviously getting to Bathurst. The good news part of this story is that Todd Hazelwood, who was on the bench basically after losing his full-time ride next year, has now just been given the keys to the chocolate factory, and he's going to be driving the champions car from last year, and a brand new car as well, because they've had to build 2 new cars over the off-season break Erebus. So Todd, who was going to be running in Porsche Carrera Cup this year in Australia and was lined up to be a co-driver for the endurance part of the year, probably with Brodie, now gets a full-time run at the mountain in the 500 on the first weekend of the season. So that is a big thumbs up to Todd Hazelwood, who was a bit unfortunate really to end up losing his seat last year, and certainly someone that's got good potential to go after a race winning some proper equipment. So good for him, but we'll have to see how this Kostecki story rumbles through over the next weeks and months.
Just got the biggest shock of my life. It was when something banged against the garage door in the commentary box. I feel like my heart just jumped out my chest there as well. It was literally like a massive crash, but it's very windy where we are in the UK in our studios. So I think it was like a bin or something getting thrown against. But whew, that's one scare already for this year. Now, when the twins. Yeah, it's Stefano. He's banging on the door. Quick, someone lock the door. He doesn't want to get in. Yeah. If Andretti can't get in, you can't get in. Now, when the 2024 Supercar season kicks off with the Bathurst 500 next month, Erebus will have a brand new driver lineup, with Kostecki gone, at least for now, and Will Brown moving to a rival team, Red Bull Ampol Racing. They'll have, as we said, Todd Hazelwood and Jack Lee Brock will be behind the wheel. Now, this story is so serious that even Supercars CEO Shane Howard felt the need to issue an official statement on behalf of the series. It says, in a Supercars statement, Supercars CEO Shane Howard said, "We understand the gravity of Brodie's decision and the challenges he may be facing at this time. On behalf of everyone at Supercars, we wish Brodie all the best, and we sincerely hope to witness his return to the Repco Supercars Championship in the future. In the meantime, we extend our support to Erebus as they navigate the start of the 2024 Repco Supercar Championship, with Todd Hazelwood and Jack Lee Brock driving with the team. Defending a championship title is never an easy task, but we are confident in Erebus's ability to adapt and continue their pursuit of success on the track." How many times can you get the full name of your series in one statement as well? Now, I was literally tripping over myself. If Kostecki doesn't race in Supercars this season, Mark Winterbottom will be the most recent champion on the grid full time. Winterbottom won the title in 2015. Since then, Supercars watched Jamie Whincup step down from full-time driving into a team principal role at Triple Eight, while Scott McLaughlin left for IndyCar, and Shane Van Gisbergen decided to pursue a career in NASCAR. Matt, starting with you on this one, then going to Kobe. Should Supercars start getting worried about losing their best drivers?
Yeah, Joe preempted this with his question from before. We already had it to discuss. Well, yes, and I think we kind of talked about this on our pre-season prediction show back at the beginning of the month. What was Supercars going to look like this year with another of their big names missing in Shane Van Gisbergen going to NASCAR? Kostecki, probably on paper before the season, would have been the favourite, probably, to, as Kobe said before, run it back and win the championship for a second time with 2 drop scores, basically, if he does come back for the second round, which is at the Grand Prix, in support of the Australian Grand Prix. He's going to be obviously behind the 8 ball already. There's been rumours about Cam Waters maybe having a run in NASCAR. Chaz Mostert, another of the top-end guys, has been doing some endurance racing stuff in his time. Had a bit of a tie-up with BMW a few years ago, although that seems to have fizzled out a little bit over the last couple of years, and he's committed to just trying to win the championship down under. So have they got a problem? I mean, there was so much talk this time last year and at the first round at Newcastle how none of the drivers really liked this new car and all the problems that came along with it over the last couple of years, and obviously it was affected by COVID and supply issues and all those kind of things as well. But really, it's much to our hour-long discussion on F1. This saddens me that my favourite championship is losing all their top guys to pastures new. Okay, there's a good crop of young talent coming through, but if you've got no superstars at the top to sow your championship around, then it really is a struggle. Matthew Owens behind the mic says, not to beat the dead horse, but again, it's all coming up aces for NASCAR. No identity challenges, no Formula One type BS, no manufacturer threatening to pull out. NASCAR is in the driver's seat. I can't disagree. They have got everything going their way at the moment. Ben says championship ratings at Phoenix were down. NASCAR may have some good things going, but it's hard for me to look at those numbers as all coming up aces. It isn't all, but it is trajectorying in the right direction. Whereas Supercars over the last, 4 or 5 years have been petering in this direction, and it's just starting to tip. But if they lose all of their top drivers, it's going that way. And there's been calls for changing of the commentary box, and there's been all the wranglings over the TV deals over the last couple of years. They just need something positive to happen. And they start at Bathurst, which would be positive, apart from the fact that we shouldn't be having 2 rounds at Bathurst in the championship season.
Yeah, Matt, totally agree with you on that. And I think we've already covered that in previous episodes of the Bathurst 500. Yeah, so we don't really need to dive into that anymore. The only time Supercars race at Bathurst is, later in the year for the Bathurst 1000, and that's it. But yeah, but it's unfortunate to see what happened at the beginning of the season, with the Newcastle 500 going away and all of that. But getting back to the question that you asked, Josh, should supercars start getting worried about losing their best drivers? I think so. Starting now, I think you have to be a little bit concerned, and you have to really look in the mirror and ask yourself, like, what are we doing? Like, why are our best and most recognizable drivers leaving the series? Obviously Jamie Whincup was getting up there in age, so he decided to take a step back, and when he's behind the wheel, he's with Brock Feeney, as the co-driver for the endurance events, and then sometimes we'll see Jamie in their Mercedes AMG GT3 as well, making some sports car starts as well. So that's enough to keep him busy after his full-time driving retirement. Scott McLaughlin, he dominated his supercars for a while, and then he left for a new challenge in the IndyCar series. Shane Van Gisbergen also dominated the series, and then decided to also go for new challenges over in NASCAR. And now we don't know what Brodie Kostecki's future is going to be after all of this has come about. So it's certainly going to be very interesting to continue to follow this story develop, to see where Brodie Kostecki is going to be racing in 2024. But all in all, I think supercars certainly have to be a little concerned after seeing their most recognizable drivers in situations like this. But on the positive side of things, it can open a door for some other young drivers to emerge, as stars of the sports as well. Like your Brock Feeney's, your McCain's, Richie Stanaway's, those drivers who you hear of, but they're not as big as like a Scott McLaughlin or a Shane Van Gisbergen or a Brodie Kostecki. I think this could be a great moment for those young drivers to really put themselves in the driver's seat as the face of the series. But replacing, the likes of McLaughlin, SVG, and if Brodie Kostecki, is going to be leaving supercars. We don't know what, like I say, we don't know what his future is going to be. It's going to be very tough to replace those guys.
Absolutely, there's no telling what will happen next in the Kostecki Erebus saga, but if he's not racing supercars this year, it makes you wonder if he could get a head start on his NASCAR ambitions. Now, Kostecki has been closely aligned with Richard Childress Racing for a while now, the same team he made his Cup debut with at Indy last summer. Now, in past interviews, Kostecki has said his short-term focus is supercars, with NASCAR being something he'd be interested in later in his career. During last year's season finale at the Adelaide 500, Richard Childress spent the whole race weekend with Kostecki and watched him get crowned as the 2023 Supercars champion. Now, Peter Addiston says this in a statement: "This is a huge loss for supercars and those supporting partners, and most importantly, the fans. It's clear there are issues across the board, from Texas to drivers. No Brodie." No, sorry, just from teams, not from the board, from teams. Yeah. See, sleep deprived. I'm so sorry. I generally read that as Texas, not teams. I've surprised myself. I'll restart this, shall I, and try again. "This is a huge loss for supercars and those supporting partners, and most importantly, the fans. It's clear there are issues across the board, from teams to drivers. No Brodie, no SVG. What a huge loss. Boost and Mobile X will continue to support Brodie as we always have." Now, Kobe. I know you, Matt, don't worry. Matt, after seeing Kostecki's main backer promising to continue supporting his career, do you think an early move to NASCAR might be in the works?
Well, for those that don't know, Peter Adderton is the man behind Boost Mobile and Mobile X, which did sponsor Brodie's run at Indianapolis last summer in the Cup Series. Let's just say he likes to get on social media and talk about things, whether right or wrong or indifferent. Peter Adderton does like his keyboard under his fingers and says what's on his mind. But it is, as we've talked about, it's a big shame for the series if this is the end of Brodie's supercar run as a full-timer, or even if he goes away for a few years and comes back, like people have talked about with SVG. As I said at the top, it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of weeks. Is it a clash? It's not the first time that Erebus have lost drivers. You think back to David Reynolds when he was there. He signed a 10-year deal with the team and said he couldn't think of being anywhere else. And after 2 years, he'd left. So it's not the first time that Erebus have had issues or trouble, let's say, with keeping hold of their drivers. And now, as you mentioned, Josh, going into this new series with one new driver in Jack LeBrock and a substitute stand-in maybe driver of, at least for the first round, of Todd Hazelwood. It's going to be really interesting to see how the series gets off. Adam says he agrees with me, was thinking that Brodie could go back to back in supercars. Maybe Brock Feeney takes the championship. I think I picked Waters on the preview show we did at the beginning of the year, so I'm going to stick with that for the moment. Matthew, going back to our NASCAR chat from before, says ratings are down for every professional sports league aside from the NFL. NASCAR's challenges are much lesser scale than IndyCar and F1, and I think we can all agree on that one.
But have they fallen as far as NASCAR have in the last decade or so? That's the important context, I think. I certainly agree they're in less overall trouble than F1 and Indy, though. Yeah, I think supercars in general are less in trouble. Could Brock Feeney be a face of supercars in the future? Ooh.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, if they can keep this crop at the top with Brock, Waters, Chazzy Mostert, Will Brown. They're all really likable guys and got a good following and fan support. We're not going to have the scenes that we've seen before with Brock, obviously the other Brock, Peter Brock, Lounsey, McLaughlin in his peak, and SVG for the last few years. I don't think we're going to have that again, although there was a lot of people that didn't like SVG, although he still managed to win the fan award last year. It's not going to be like that again, but we have still got a good crop of people coming through that can keep the championship supported with talent at the front. Hello to Ed, who's jumped in on the chat and says, bold prediction, we will get a Saudi Arabian-owned F1 team before we get an Andretti F1 team. And if anyone that's watched the show's last couple of weeks of Ed on knows his views on Saudi Arabia, I think we'll just move on from there.
Ben said that would be the final nail in the coffin for a lot of people. I think it would be as well. Well, speaking of getting things wrong tonight and myself being very sleep deprived, I've turned into Marty Reed, it seems, as well, by calling people different names and reading out different things. The reason for my severe sleep deprivation was the Rolex 24 Hours at Daytona. And it seems that not even they can get things right, because on Sunday's Grid Live wrap-up show, we discussed the confusing end of the Rolex 24 at Daytona. As Felipe Nasr and Tom Blomqvist battled for the overall win, everyone assumed would have 2 laps to go with time running out. However, Nasr came across the line and took the checkered flag when we expected him to take the white flag. Many people were confused, wondering if the race was over or not. Even Nasr himself said he was confused but kept his foot on the throttle until they knew for sure the race was over. Now, IMSA have released this statement. Due to an officiating error in race control, IMSA inadvertently announced and subsequently displayed the white flag with under 3 minutes remaining in Sunday's race. Now, at the end of the lap, the race-leading number 7 GTP car then received the checkered flag with 1 minute, 37.277 seconds still remaining, ending the race short of the planned 24 hours by effectively 1 lap. Based on Article 49 of the 2024 IMSA Sporting Regulations and Standard Supplementary Regulations, should the checkered flag be inadvertently or otherwise displayed before the leading car completes the scheduled number of laps or before the prescribed time has been completed, the race is nevertheless deemed ended when the flag is displayed. Quite ironic that the Rolex 24 can't get its timings right. So what were your thoughts on the end of the Rolex 24, and are you satisfied with IMSA's explanation there, Matt?
I think I am. Although it was a shame, obviously, that we missed out on having the last lap. Thankfully, all 4 classes, we had that great battle towards the end of the race, from what I saw while following on social media, because I haven't watched any of the race, waiting for IMSA to put it up on YouTube tomorrow. We had that great battle towards the end, but it wasn't, it wasn't like the Porsches a couple of years ago when they crashed in the Le Mans chicane, or other close finishes we've had in classes. The 2 Corvettes going side by side to the line was memorable a few years back too. Thankfully, none of the classes and the result was affected by the end of the race. The first thing that came to mind, and Josh, you'll remember this, was when Pele waved the checkered flag in the Brazilian Grand Prix all those years ago, and he did it a lap too soon. We had the one in Canada, was it, a few years ago when Lewis won?
Winnie Harlow.
That's it. I was trying to remember her name, the model that was asked to wave the checkered flag, and she did it 1 lap too early. Once the checkered flag's out, that's the end of the race. IMSA, it took them a while to get their statement out, but they did, and I'm pretty pretty happy with it, to be honest. You can lose 1 minute 30 of a 24-hour race. You can't lose 6 hours. So thankfully, it wasn't done at some random time in the middle of the day or night that it didn't.
I would have liked it to have been 6 hours earlier.
Yes, the marathon commentary jobs that were going on at track and not at track would have made to enjoy that. But it would have been our top story tonight if it had happened. Crazy finish to the Rolex, says Adam. It was an awesome to be part of the broadcast with you, Josh, and Molly Reid winning Brickyard crew chief. Yes, indeed, Matthew. It's one of our favourite lines. That's why I tried to sneak it in under Josh's nose there before.
Oh, I got it. I was actually clueless as well. I do feel a bit like Marty tonight as well. Not bless him. I am genuinely still exhausted from the 24, and I go again. Now, secretly, we have got MotoGP testing starting tonight, but from what I've seen, they're not advertising that the official test is until next week. This 3 days coming up is a shakedown, and there's nothing that's been announced, and there's no live timing. So if the live timing isn't on at 2 a.m., then I can go back to bed for 3 days and just do wrap-up shows. I'd rather do that and then get myself fully prepped for the test at the end of the week, because otherwise I've got to think of more footage, because there's no television commentary, there's no track footage. I've got to do it all myself, and it's not me talking, but organizing the show is very confusing, very annoying. But anyway, by the time next week comes around, I'll either be feeling better or going to Marty Reid for some advice on how to deal with it all. But next here on this very extended Grid Tonight, which is now going into Grid Good Morning, here's Matt White with our latest from the Grid EPI update. It is actually February for me and Matt right now.
It is. Happy new month. I was going to say, by the time next week comes around, we might still be doing this show. Here's the Grid Endurance Performance Index update. As we were talking about Daytona, we'll start there. We'll wrap up the class and overall winners from the Rolex 24 at the weekend. Dane Cameron, Matt Campbell, Felipe Nasr, and Joseph Newgarden, the overall winners for Penske Porsche, after that tremendous battle with the Tom Blomqvist Whelen Cadillac towards the end of the race. They come out on top to take the first honours in the Rolex 24 and the IMSA Sports Car Championship for 2024. In LMP2, Dwight Merriman, Ryan Diao, Christian Rasmussen, and Connor Zilic getting the victory in the second prototype class. 2 GTD categories, of course, the Pro Class 1-4 AF Corsa Ferrari, while Daniel Serra, James Clado, Alessandro Pierguidi, and Davide Rigon. And in GTD, Daniel Morad, Indy Donche, Phil Ellis, and Russell Ward getting the victory down there for the Mercedes team. It wasn't the only 24-hour race, of course, over the weekend. We had another one in Dubai, and that was won by Audi, Christopher Haase, Jill Magnus, Simon Richter, and Mike Zhou getting the victory in the Desert 24-hour race, or that always runs in January. A couple of weeks delayed this year, as we talked about last week, but that is run and done as well. This week in Grid Endurance Performance Index Land, the Asian Le Mans Series kicks back into gear. We had 2 races at Sepang, where the MotoGP test is happening this weekend. That was before Christmas, and now we're back into gear with 3 races over the next 2 weeks. This weekend in Dubai, and then 2 races at Abu Dhabi next weekend to complete the season. So we'll give you the winners of those couple of races over the next few weeks. We'll have the first Grid Endurance Performance Index leaderboard on our first show in April, so be sure to check out that once we've got plenty more races under the belt. But now it's time to hand over to Kobe for a couple more headlines from the week.
Thanks, Matt. Now time for some more motorsports news from around the world. Cadillac Racing announced that Josh Williams will make select starts in the NASCAR Cup Series this season. Williams will compete in this weekend's Busch Light Clash in Los Angeles, driving the number 16 Chevrolet with sponsorship from Alloy Employer Services. We'll also see Williams back behind the wheel of the Cadillac Cup car at Atlanta. 1 week after AJ Allmendinger runs the car in the Daytona 500, Williams said getting another opportunity in the Cup Series is humbling, and he's been spending time in the Chevrolet simulator preparing for the Clash. It was previously announced that Williams will compete full-time in the Xfinity Series this season for the team. Graphic courtesy of Cadillac Racing. The FIM, IRTA, and Dorna Sports confirmed the cancellation of the 2024 MotoGP Argentina Grand Prix. In an official statement, they said, due to current circumstances in Argentina, the event's promoter is currently unable to guarantee the services required for the race to take place at MotoGP standards. The race will not be replaced, so we'll see 21 MotoGP race weekends instead of 22. Despite Argentina dropping off the calendar this year, MotoGP still intends to return to Termas del Rio Hondo in 2025. And now I'm going to turn it over to Matt for another edition of Hots and Knots.
busy weekend that was, of course, with the Rolex, with Formula E in Saudi, and with WRC in Monte Carlo taking the big headline news stories from the past weekend. We'll start on the hot side, Josh. I've got two. Well, one is a hot and a not, actually. We'll start with that one, which is the one that Kobe just mentioned, which is the Argentinian Grand Prix being cancelled for MotoGP. It's a not because we don't go to South America now, and that's the only race in South America. But it's also a hot because there's one more less race that all these teams, and well, we talked about it with F1 before, and the calendar and etc. MotoGP is going in a similar way. It's actually a good thing that we don't have that race in my eyes, because that's another big shipping stuff. They were going to go from Portimao to Argentina and then up to Kota and then back to Europe. Now they'll just have the hop over to Kota and then back again to Jerez. So one race off the calendar. I'm sure a lot of the teams, when they got that officially, maybe it was today, yesterday, whenever it was, were actually a little bit of a sigh of relief that they weren't having an extra race in the calendar. My other hot is from the Monty. It's actually from WRC2, where the lead changed 7 times over the weekend between 3 people. It was an absolutely tremendous battle, and Johan Rossell snatched the victory in WRC2, and I think it was 7th overall on the final stage of the rally to beat Pepe Lopez, who was tremendous all weekend as well. So that was my hot really, was Johan Rossell winning the WRC2 in Monte.
Definitely think the race in Argentina going is a good thing because it's too big of a calendar. Slightly disappointed that we're not going to Hungary. Not really. Hungary was announced, either the Hungaroring or another track in Hungary was announced as a backup venue in case a race dropped off. Didn't happen, did it? So yeah, again, Dorna, and I don't think Kazakhstan's going to happen. That's a track. Kazakhstan is a track that's broke ground in 2014, something like that, and still hasn't opened. Yeah, I was doing research on it earlier on because Herman Duck designed it. Still hasn't opened, so I do not think we'll be racing in Kazakhstan. Much like we announced Finland and never went there. So the Kimi Ring. Yeah, so we're not going to go there either. So I think we'll be down to about 20 races by the time this season properly kicks in. I'm also starting to think as well that as a knot with MotoGP is their lack of socials at the moment. I've been going on about it for so long. It is starting to annoy me that we're right back up now. This is pre-season testing, and there is little to no information about what is going on, and it is annoying. We've had also news of an injury for Franco Morbidelli, and he's apparently okay now, which is great news. He's flying back, but he won't be at the shakedown test. He might not even be at the official test next week. So there's problems brewing there, and yeah, it's getting a bit ridiculous. Now, another knot, actually. I know we should start with hots, but so I'll wait for knot. Okay. Well, I was low on hot. I think hot obviously was the mammoth broadcast that the team did, and I was so proud of the Grid show as well for their pre-race, over 1,000 viewers, fantastic stuff all across the weekend, and the whole 24 hours live for once it was all done. And I think also a special hot must go to Jackson, first ever commentary he's ever done. And he was an absolute natural. Can't wait to have him join us across the board this year. Thanks as well to Joe, to Adam as well, who put in mammoth stints, Josh T as well. It's going to be fun. On to my one knot, though, is Formula E. And I don't know if you spotted this, but they've been given a lot of social media people platforms to go to the races and do content with them as well. And they are not the right people. They've endorsed a watch along, which is somebody who knows nothing about Formula E, who was surprised when cars were on track in qualifying, didn't understand the qualifying format, and wasn't that great as well at providing details of racing overtakes. That's not me saying, well, I do it better. That's me saying that this is the officially endorsed one, and it's not bringing value to the sport. And also it's announced today that they've invited people down. There was a comedian who was on the grid in Mexico and has been doing a couple of things that was asking the drivers, have you seen Salzburg, and putting the mic in there. And he released it over the Saudi Arabia weekend. He was deliberately trying to get the drivers to say something about gay people, in a country, of course, where human rights and sexual rights are very much on the question. And it so annoyed me. And I know it annoyed Hazel Southwell as well. It annoyed me as well, because they are people who are getting these accreditations and they are just using it for laughs, and they're using it to abuse people. It's horrible. So I think Formula E really needs to sort of take a look at themselves and go, look, you want people who are fans of motorsports to be talking to other fans of motorsports, not celebrities, comedians who know nothing about the sport coming in and making a mockery, getting the drivers in trouble with things. It is honestly ridiculous as well. And I feel a bit disgusted with Formula E this evening as well. And I know Ed Hunter's been feeling the same thing with the Saudi involvement, but Formula E is taken a bit of a, in my opinion, over the last couple of weeks.
I don't disagree. And if there's enough people that are on the back of Formula E for the wrong reasons, just generally, they don't need extra pile-on for this kind of thing, which is coming out through their own content and people that have been given, media accreditation, as you said. I don't think I've got a knot from this weekend, because apart from the fact that the Formula E races just weren't that great, really, and the attack mode is just not working. It really is not working at all what it was supposed to do, and it's now just being used as a defense mechanism for track position. So maybe we should just change the name of it to track position mode or something. I don't know, TPM. So it really was poor. And now, because of the Hyderabad race going away, we've got this humongous gap in the Formula E calendar now until Sao Paulo, which is the second weekend of March, which is a real shame for a series that needs to build momentum. Having 3 races in January and then not having anything for the next 6 weeks is not good. Matthew says, my hot is that I'm calling races this weekend. Yes, finally, at long last, it's time to drop the hammer on early Sunday afternoon, because we'll have the NASCAR Mexico race on the Ultimate Sports Radio Network on Mixler.com. If you aren't by a screen and fancy a listen, then I think it's going to be Matt and Seth doing the call at the weekend for that one. And then, of course, the Clash for the Cup Series at the Coliseum on Sunday. And then that's it then. Motorsport's back officially. Once NASCAR's going, we really are back for the rest of the year all the way through until November.
Breathe. I tell you what, I don't know if we're actually teaming up on the Clash or not. I know we're covering it, but I don't know if we're all together for that. Is that the big launch? I don't know what's going on with it. I know for the Jules at Daytona, we're all together. I'm just taking my glasses off. I need to read the end of the script. I don't know where I am anymore. Oh, right, okay. Let's get on with it. Let's wrap up the show, because after 90 minutes, my brain gone fuzzy. So please do subscribe to our YouTube channel now so that you don't miss any of our shows as well, because we've got so much coming up over the next few weeks as well, with all the motorsport returning to your screens. Thank you very much for helping us reach the milestone of 830 subscribers. Now help us reach our new goal of 900 subscribers on the road to 1,000. You can hit the bell icon to get notifications for when we go on air, and follow all of our social media platforms and visit gridranking.com. You can take 5 minutes to invest in the Grid Network through Patreon. Join Colin, Mark, Deshelle, Robin and David and Matthew, who invest each month in the Grid Network, and we do encourage you to join these fine folks who keep us on the air. Now, once we hit $500 per month, we can start sending our team to the track to cover more races and continue expanding our coverage. Link to all of that is in the video description. Side effect of Daytona, I've got a cough. Now, if you want to do a one-time donation, you can click on the Buy Me a Coffee link as well. Get your name on the board and invest as much as you want. To consider buying a specific on-air personality a cup of coffee, and they'll thank you on the air. You can also support us by donating during our live streams through Super Chat. For Kobe Lambeth, there he is, Matt White from Grid Performance Index, and Ben Schneider, I'm Joshua Burch. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time. Thank you for sticking around. Good night.